Okay.
Mindy, don't call you Missy. I was mistaken.
Oh, that's okay. I always say it's like Mork and Mindy.
There we
Easiest way to
go.
remember it.
There we go.
Nice to meet you, Mindy. How are you?
Good to see you again.
Yes, Mork and Mindy. Oh.
Yep, that works.
No, his last name's Morkin, so that makes it.
Oh, yours is Mork.
We're done here.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
You have 30 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
Get a little situated here. And,
Yes.
well, welcome back. I came down early, so because I was afraid of the weather coming through.
Yeah.
And so I was able to spend a full day in town here, driving around and seeing things, and
Wow.
pretty impressive. Pretty impressive place.
Thanks. You spent the whole day?
I did. I actually had the assignment you gave me to do though, too, so it really wasn't the whole day driving around.
Like 10 minutes usually covers the
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Unless you went to Hoka, then maybe 15. But.
Then it just seemed like a whole day.
Well, if you hit the stoplight wrong, that can
Yeah,
throw things off
17.
too.
Where's my Hoka people? Where are my Hoka people?
All right. We'll call this meeting back to order. All right. Good evening and welcome to La Crescent Hoka Public Schools. Thank you for meeting with us about becoming our school district's next superintendent. As you may know, we have already interviewed one other candidate today. All candidates will be notified by MSBA as soon as the school board has finished our deliberations tonight. School board members will rotate asking you questions today, and we'll all be taking notes to assist us in our deliberations. Please know we are listening carefully while we write and do not intend to be disrespectful. Also, we have allocated 1 hour for the interview, and our last question will be whether you have any questions for us. You may use whatever time remains for this purpose. We have provided a copy of the interview questions for you. Did you get those?
Yeah, right here.
Okay. Please note there are 12 questions, and MSBA's representatives will notify us when there are 30, 15, and 5 minutes remaining. Since you introduced yourself to everyone and everyone knows you, I think we'll just dive right in with Mr. Jeff Conway.
There you go. All right. Mindy, could you tell us about your first 100 days being superintendent of the La Crescent Hoka School District?
I sure will.
All right.
Like I said, I worked on your assignment earlier today.
Oh, okay.
You found a printer in La Crescent?
The hotel was incredibly
Oh, okay.
accommodating.
Thank you.
Yep. And so just using that as a point of reference to go through. So my vision for the first 100 days in La Crescent Hoka, and it's ISD 300 here, correct, would be really focused on 3 initial priorities. And that would be aligning district action and resources and getting familiarized with those so that I know where the alignments are and can look at that and talk with the board, so how we can continue moving forward and make that very efficient and effective. In order to, and then also it would be to advance some of the equity practices. What are we doing for equity? How do we make sure that every student has everything they need to learn? And as you've probably heard before, I really believe that equal is not fair and fair is not equal, and equity doesn't mean that everything is equal. It means that everyone gets what they need in order to move forward and to do a good job. And then the next one would be working on a strategy to really continue all the good work that's going on and to maximize those learning potentials and capacity. Doing some of those things that will extend, things that we talked about before in other interviews that really don't ever cost anything. It might just be a little streamlining or alignment or tweaking of some things. And I'll go into detail on each of those later. The 3 phases of the plan. Phase 1, upon having a contract negotiated between the district and myself, one of the things that I would start doing is start having conversations either virtually or in person between now and July 1 with different stakeholder groups. Board starting first, getting good conversations so that on July 1 or there soon after I can hit the ground running. And that phase 1 would go through the end of July. And during that time, it would really be a hardcore focus on understanding all of the things that are happening in the district and district intentions and where we want to go, or where we have wanted to go. And then also building those networks and getting to know people and building relationships and making sure that people knew who the new superintendent was before they ever sent their children into the building. Phase 2 would happen in August, September, and October. And that would be a time where it's continued relationship building. That's something that I believe happens all the time, that never goes away. You continue to build those relationships and expand on them. At this point, it'd be a little bit easier for me to be in person because I'd be down here in July and August. And so then setting up some things for families to get to know me, whether it be community picnics, whether it be like I did in Red Lake, a soup with the soup, whatever it happens to be that way, or just, you know, being out and about in the public and eating at local restaurants and making sure that people knew who I was and that I was approachable. Then we go into phase 3, because phase 2 will take us through October. The 100th day would generally happen in November. And from that point on, we'd continue to work on those 100-day goals of relationship building and continuing to streamline and add to programming. But by that point, we would have a really good handle on what we're doing. And then that is when we take that first 100 days and go into starting to expand upon or develop a strategic plan, a strategic 5-year plan. You talked about, in my last interview, Eric, that you know, as a school board, you felt like construction managers and you felt like other things like that. And this would be the time where we'd set up and we'd work together to really have you feel like a school board and have that plan laid out. And whatever plan you have currently, we just look at that and continue to expand that. So it's a full 5 years. If you go into the second page, phase 1 activities, like I said, one-on-one meetings, meeting with stakeholders, engagement in an initial analysis of student achievement and climate data. So in that June, July time, I'd be looking for a lot of the data that I could review. So when I come in, I had an idea of what was going on and where we needed to go. And I could make some independent assessments so that as I met further and further with people, I'd have an idea and then we'd go in and I'd hear what the other ideas were and we can pull it together. Reviewing financial data. That would be a time for me to really look at the financial data, talk to your business manager and the people who are working in with your financials, accounts payable, receivable, et cetera, and look at that and see what are your enrollment and financial projections for the next 3 years. And then it would be looking at leadership in development, developing what was going to happen when we return to school in the fall. What do we need to do? Are there any plans that the state's going to come down with where we have to continue with our safe learning plans, et cetera? Or are we going to be able to do it our way? And then what do we do for staff onboarding? You know, how many new staff are there going to be? What kind of onboarding do we do? In Red Lake, I found that we have much better turnout with our staff because I've put together a 4-day onboarding program for teachers, and then there's about a 2-day onboarding program for all other staff. And that includes everyone from paras, custodians, bus drivers, you name it. Everyone has an onboarding program. And then for mid-year hires for non-certified positions, we've recorded those onboarding programs, and so we'll be able to simulate that for any mid-year hires we need. Phase 2, this is where it gets kind of fun and wordy. That's why I put this down. Phase 2 really focuses on academic excellence, equity, cohesive leadership teams, and continuous improvement. And so looking at those 4 areas, and you can see how we've detailed that out. I would work with the existing planning teams and the existing staff. You have a very strong staff. You have a lot of great stuff happening. So it's building on that and networking into that. Setting that high bar for achievement and removing the barriers that the teachers have. Like I have said before, my true belief of what a superintendent is really the head custodian and that. My job is to remove all the barriers and clean up all the messes. And so that's so that everyone else can do their jobs. And as we're looking through that, looking at what's our professional development? Where do we want to start going? What are the projects and programs we want to have for kids? One of doing that, engage the initial analysis of student achievement, and then also doing an inventory of all of the initiatives that are happening. One of the things I've found in 34 plus years of being in education is that most school districts have never met an initiative they don't like. And they just keep adding to it. There is a book that was written by a gentleman who worked for Hallmark and then created Shoebox Greetings, okay, the division of Hallmark. And his book is called Orbiting the Giant Hairball. Because and it's a great book. It's a quick read, great book, managerial level kind of book. But what he talks about in the comparison he draws is that many times organizations that exist for many, many years are kind of like a cat's hairball, okay? It's layer after layer of the hair that kind of gets all balled up. And you can't really separate it. You just you either get rid of it or you're stuck with it. And so his theory is that instead of getting rid of it or being stuck with it, you orbit it. And you stay just tethered enough to the hairball so you can stay connected and keep things going, but you're able to function outside of that. And that's kind of the thing with the initiative, okay? When we have all of these initiatives going, and an initiative inventory, I sit down with leadership or I sit down with teachers, and we write all of the things that they're doing. You know, what are all the things that we're doing? Oh, we're doing read write, we're doing we're doing a math initiative, we're doing an initiative over here, we're doing something in language arts, we've got a writing program we're doing here. We decided to add something new to the senior high program that just, and some of them are working and some of them aren't. And so we go through and we put them all down, so it's like a brain dump of all the things that are happening. And then part of that audit is going through and finding out what's working best for our kids. What are things that we absolutely want to save? And what are the things that we're going, our time and energy and effort would be better spent doing this. And so starting out with that base, so we know what we're doing and where we're going, that also helps give us a very clear direction. And that fits in, that initiative audit would fit all 4 of those areas. And so once they're down there, you start dividing them up into those cohesive leadership, equity, etc. And then, like I said here, the phase 3 would be taking that data and starting to build on or create, depending on what you have and how happy the board is with your strategic plan. It would be designing that and setting that up so that we would be up and ready to go with that for the 23-24 school year. That's just kind of what's defined in here, so.
Thanks.
Thank you.
What 3 qualities do you possess that you believe make you an outstanding administrator? And what one quality will you need support with to be successful?
Number one, or actually not in order, but one of the qualities that I possess is that I'm very approachable and I build relationships very, very easily. Second one is that I work really hard to get to know people and know what their strengths are and to know what they want to work on or what they need to work on. There's 2 different pieces to that. Because some people, like your end part of the question, what's one of the qualities that you want to have but you want to grow in, And so finding that out about people. And I've been fortunate in my career to find that I'm very good at that. And putting people together in teams to get maximum work out of them. Maximum positive work for students, so we make the biggest bang for our buck. So those 2, and then I'm very visionary in what I do, so I sit back and I look out 3 to 5 years minimum, and okay, if we do this, 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 and this, we'll get to this end. As part of that too, I also am very open and understanding to when I'm working with my teams, saying, okay, this is what the end looks like. This is what it's gonna look like when we get here, and this is how we'll know we're here. This is how I think we could get there. But if you have another way, or whatever, as long as we get here, and so there are certain things that I can really let go of, and just allow my staff to get to where we need to go, with check-ins along the way. And there are other times if people need a little more coaching or guidance going through, I'm very willing to do that too. One of the qualities that I'll need support with, or that I would like support with, I don't know that I need it, because I do cross-checks quite frequently about understanding, you know, having that clarity of understanding of what I'm saying, what we're thinking, and understanding what people say to me. So it's that expressive, receptive. But that would be one of the things I would open up for everyone to really feel comfortable supporting and talking about and saying, hey, I didn't really understand that. Or, did you really mean? Or, let's get clear about, you know, what we're saying here. That's one of the things that I think always would be super effective. And as I said, I think I said this to you guys before. When I was in high school myself, part of me going into education is because I was a twice exceptional student, and so was gifted and did very well and was in the gifted program, but nobody in the school could figure out why I'd write a 5-page paper in one sentence, and it was all comma spliced together and spelled in Mindyisms. So that would be one of the things too. Someone that is really good at proofing. I have a few of those on my own. I've built networks of that, but that would be something too, getting documents out that have correct spelling on them.
Thank you. Question number 6. Can you please tell us how you are going to make a difference?
The easy, and it's an easy answer for me. How am I going to make a difference here? It's because I always put the students first. See, you didn't believe that I could not be verbose.
Thank you.
What have you found to be effective in increasing the achievement of at-risk students?
Actually, several things. Almost my entire career, I've worked with at-risk students. And it really is, you know, you have to look at what is your definition for at-risk. Am I looking at a child at risk because maybe academically they can perform very well, but they have some other factors in their lives, so maybe they're not attending school as much as they should be. They need some external supports, maybe they're struggling with some emotional things. So it's really getting to know the kids first. And as a superintendent, you're several layers back from that, but you rely on your staff to get to know them, and you trust your staff. And so as people would tell me, these are the things that we're looking for, then how do we design the programming to make sure that we take care of that? In different districts, I've had kids that, well, in my current district and multiple others, didn't have any mode of transportation for any after-school activities. You know, either they lived, some of the districts were so wide and so big. Red Lake is one of those. One of the schools that the high school kids stay at is 43 miles away from where we practice. And if their family has a car, there's one. And so how do we get those kids to be able to practice and participate? And so we found different ways to do late busing and different things like that. I've had at-risk kids where there's not enough food at home. And so we look at putting in additional programming and partnering up with, like currently, in Red Lake, I've partnered up with Boys and Girls Club, and through the school food service program, I can do lunch and snack and that kind of thing. And we can do an after-school thing, and they can do additional snacks too. And so what we do is we get together and partner and see how, using that system, can we arrange enough of the meals so that that the kids get fed and they go home with what they need. That's one of them. Academically, it's finding some of those programs that work really well. One of the things that is crucial is making sure kids can read. In Red Lake, we struggled with that, and our kids didn't come with a lot of, skill set for reading it, and a lot of support for that. And so what we did this year is we added in and did training for Read Write, which is an intense intervention. And instead of using it as an intense intervention, we're using it as our reading curriculum. And so all of our kids are going through Read Write. Now, the way that program is working, and all of our teachers are trained in it, so in the elementary now. Next year, we'll add that in as an intense intervention for 6th through 12th grade. The data on that is that in 6th through 12th grade, if a child has 20 hours where they're paying attention and working, and you work in small groups, they will increase a grade level. And once they get to the point where they're an excellent reader, the programming and the way they do it actually teaches the neural synapses to refire, and it reprograms the brain. Once they get to that excellent reader stage, not only can they read and understand, but they can also read out loud, and they don't stumble as they're reading out loud because of the way it rewires your brain. Now, that's just the first step. Then you have to go into like literature circles and literature studies after that, because then you have to learn how to do inferences, because this program just teaches the reading part of it. But so we're working with that, and we have, right now, we're 3 months in, and I should have brought the data. But like in our 5th grade, we started with about 85% of our kids in a level 1 or 2, and a level 1 is a non-reader. And actually, level 1 through 3 in 5th grade. Now, about 85% of our kids are in 3 through 5, and some of them are out. So I'm just shocked. I mean, I knew the research and everything, but I'm one of those kind of, yeah, let me see it, and it has worked. It's just amazing. And we've got more readers at the lower levels than we ever have. So, those are some of the things that we do, and it's just finding that intervention, finding that strategy that works for the kids.
Thank you. Question number 8, you are entering a new school district. How are you going to go about building relationships?
Oh, well, you got to remember, I used to be a kindergarten teacher. So I am really good about doing that. Meet Miss Crowley. And so, some of that, just being available, making appointments with city council, making appointments with different public figures, going out and introducing myself. As I went into some of the districts I've been in, I actually went to the neighbors when I was doing the charter school in Brooklyn Center. I walked up to every neighborhood house and introduced myself and just asked them if they had any questions, and then said I was going to have just a little get-together in front of the school, and so we did that. And all the neighbors came in, and they talked, and we, talked about this and that. And after that meeting, a week later, I had 3 little old ladies that came up to me and said, "We're watching the school when you're not here. And there were some shenanigans going on." And so we were able to, so it's doing those kind of things and building those relationships. I live, work, and do business locally, and so that helps. Generally, when you come in as a superintendent, there's, people will see your picture and they'll know who you are, and I'm not opposed to just going up and talking to people too. So,
Very good, thank
and
you.
I take suggestions, so if you'd have any suggestions, I take those well too.
All right, can you describe your approach to staff evaluations?
When I'm doing evaluations of staff, I do it, the two models that I like the most, or actually the one model I like the most is the Marzano model. And part of the reason for that is it's very specific and there's a rubric on it. So staff know exactly what you're looking at and talking about. Now Danielson has another rubric-based model that's very good. Mr. Marshall from the Marshall memo has another one that I've used also that's very good. But I like using a rubric-based form, okay, for lack of a better word. Now, we don't go just by the form, but that gives us a launching point. And from the three different forms that I've talked about, I can usually find one that will match up with what your teacher evaluation system is, or match up with the other evaluation systems. And so then we would go in and we do it just like, you know, I hope that principals are evaluating teachers, et cetera. You have a pre-interview, you talk about what your goals are, you talk about what the district level goals are and what you want to see, and then the individuals have their goals. So they state their professional goals. And then you identify the rubrics that match those the best, and you talk about what we're going to do and what you're going to see. I do like having multiple points of evaluation, so it would be an arranged one, but then there's also walkthroughs. And if I'm doing walkthroughs and it's something that I'm evaluating, I generally have a little notebook or something and I write it down. Yes, I'm old school, so I still write it down and give it to them. I know I can do it on my computer or my phone, but I'm just not as fast at that. Because I also believe that if you're going through and you're doing something, people get nervous if they even think it's an evaluation. And so it really calms the nerves to know what you're thinking right away. And so then you pull all that data together and you'd have a post. And with my post, and during my evaluations, I do scripting. And then the post is, the first part of that is always that I show what I've written to the individual. And we go through and I say, read this and tell me if what I saw is accurate. Because sometimes you'll be in there and you'll see something and you might not know the backstory. And so I just had one of the music teachers come in and talk to me last week in Red Lake because he said, you know, I'm feeling a little nervous because my principal came in and watched this lesson and said I wasn't doing X, Y, Z, but she had come in right after I had set that up. You know, what do I do? And so we kind of talked through that. So I always show that and say, hey, what did I miss? Or if I have any questions, I put it down and then I go through that first. And then we'll go through and we'll say, okay, how did this fit? You know, where do you think you were? And the individual does a self-evaluation and then I do mine and then we talk about it. And so it's really a coaching and growth conversation. And then we set goals for the next. So.
Provide an example of how you have supported both staff and students' mental health.
We put in, and at various levels, so at the early childhood elementary level, we've put in a lot of mindfulness activities. We have brought in zones of regulation, and so we talk about that at the beginning of every day, and we talk about centering. We do a lot of little mindfulness minutes throughout the day, and that works exceptionally well. We've done a lot of training. We just had a training for the entire cabinet. It was one of our group training things. It was a 6-week training, 1 hour a week, on psychological first aid. And if you've looked at that, that's a program that generally is used when you have like traumatic events like Katrina or things like that, where you've had a natural disaster or something really horrible has happened in that area. That was something that originally during the tragedy at Red Lake, they had started working on some of that and then it kind of fell off by the wayside. but we brought it back, and really what it does, and the reason I did it is because a lot of what we're seeing now, after being through the going into the pandemic and being in this for so long, and all of those stages, is that people are struggling in different ways. And so this just gives the leadership the language to talk to people who may be showing some of those signs of struggle, and help refer them to the sources that they need, that can do the help. In the high school, and so that was for adults and for students. So the leadership was trained for that in adults and students. And then in the high school, we've started doing mindfulness minutes. We're in the Turnaround Arts program, and so this past week, one of the things we did with 7th and 8th grade is we had Lady Midnight come in, and one of the local rappers, and our kids are doing music videos. If anyone is interested in seeing them, and this really is a mental health piece, during my tenure in Red Lake, we hit the 15th anniversary of the tragedy, and the students that created that music video were some of those students were students that were babies, and that their parents were involved or were impacted by the tragedy. And so as we go through, they've got one out that's called Where We Belong, and it's just amazing. And what the work they've done is just incredible, and I would just highly suggest that you take a look at that. So that's one of those pieces, finding those outlets so that kids can vent and express some of those concerns. We also did yoga and meditation in the middle school and high school, and believe me, my teachers told me they thought I was nuts when I suggested it. There's no way these big kids are gonna do this. And sure enough, not only did they do it, they enjoyed it, and the interesting thing was we saw a marked decrease in misbehavior after lunch because they just came back and were centered. And started teaching those skills for that. The other thing we brought in is restorative practice circles. So we have circles, so if two groups are beefing, or if there's someone who does something in the classroom, we do a circle with the kids in the classroom that may have been put off because of whatever happened. And then we have an independent meeting with the child, and then we bring them back to the circle, and then people can talk about how did this impact you, or what could we do differently. And so it's a lot of really trying to do a lot of repair.
Okay, we are on question 11. This question is about strategic planning. What were the top 5 areas of the last strategic plan that you helped develop?
Basically, looking at, I always have an academic part in it, so it's increasing, academics in whatever form they are. Another piece of it is working on college and career ready, because not all students are college-bound students. Like I said, my grandfather was an industrial tech teacher, and the trades are very important. And, we can't diminish that, as a district, that we continue building things so kids can go into the trades. So looking at that, looking at another piece of the last strategic plan, which is in Red Lake, was reinvigorating the culture and reinvigorating the language. So that was a huge part of it. And then not only that, but embedding Ojibwe Moan into the governing documents. And so in our policies, school board approved policies, we have ties back to language and culture, and making sure that this is going to happen all of the time. And then, looking at attendance, that's a big one that we had in Red Lake too, is just attendance rate, because our attendance rate when I started was, right in that mid-60s, depending on the building. And so, working to build that up. Now, the pandemic has done us no favors in that. It's kind of we're kind of calling a do-over on what we did, because kids got used to not being in school. But so those areas were I think if I have 5 fingers on my hand, I think I got to them.
Thank you.
Provide an example of when you have successfully repaired damaged relationships.
You know what, I'm going to go back. The other piece is a financial and fiscal component to the strategic plans. And that tie back into the community, so. I was really focusing just on the kids in that area, but yeah.
Thank you.
I am in the process of doing that currently, and it's actually working out. We had a very unfortunate situation at the school that caused a lot of hard feelings between different staff members. In school systems, sometimes when you work so closely together with people during the day all the time, sometimes people get to be really close, but then things can happen outside of work that then impact work. And that was the situation we were in. And it got to be really quite difficult. Actually, 2 teachers left the district because of it. And now, because we're in an area where we have lots of spousal relationships that are teaching, they might be in different buildings, but they're all there. So some of the members are there, some of them aren't, so it's really kind of trying to pull things together. We've gotten to the point where everyone is, and this is just probably 4 months out now. And we're at the point where everyone can be in the same room and everyone works very professionally together. And they're doing good things for kids. We've got some plans as to how we're gonna move that forward. But it was just a lot of, like I said, the same thing I believe for the kids in the restorative circles and the bringing kids, it's talking it through. Bring it in, talking it through, setting boundaries, you know, and moving forward. And being very transparent, and I do have the ability to be very, very transparent about this is a non-negotiable. This will not happen. We have one long-standing, so this is a totally different situation. We have one long-standing situation where 2 staff members working at the same grade level are struggling. And so we've gone through a bunch of different things. I'm working hand in hand with the teachers union to get that done. And we most recently opened up the doors of the school to 2 field reps from admin to come in, and they did mediation session between the 2 teachers that was completely non-disciplinary. Because, you know, and then they were told, the staff were told that this is going to become disciplinary if this doesn't stop because it's impacting kids. But I wanted to give them every chance possible. And so far, so good. Now, that's only about, that mediation was about 3 weeks ago. So far, so good.
A superintendent's leadership style impacts the tone of the organization. What do you consider to be important leadership qualities you would bring to La Crescent Hoka Public Schools?
Honesty, integrity, transparency. I've said this before, I'm kind of a WYSIWYG. It's a what you see is what you get. So there's no hidden agendas, no anything else. I'm really an open book. That's a good thing and a bad thing, and people have to know that going into it, because being an open book, you may not always like what I have to say. But it's always going to be the truth, and that honesty integrity piece is that whether a school board member calls me, whether a member of the general public calls me, whether a teacher's grandmother calls me and asks me, they're going to get the same answers. And so that's, you know, those are the pieces. The other thing with leadership style and leadership qualities, I believe that it's really important that a leader doesn't just sit at the top and work down. A leader is right in there working with. So one of the other things you'll see is that I'm visible. I'm in the schools, I'm out with people. I've been known to Actually, I've been known to raise havoc in classrooms at times, because you pop in and it's like, hey, who's the crazy looking curly-haired lady? But, so getting in and doing those things, like, and I did tell you this in the last one too, and I'll just repeat it, and being willing to do all of the things. So whether it's, if we're short a cook in the kitchen, I carry my food service license so that I can jump in and help out with that. During basketball games in Crosby, I pushed the floor, to make sure it was clean and ready to go for the next one. So it's those kind of servant leadership pieces too that come in there.
Mindy, you have 17 minutes remaining.
Yeah, I kept looking at my thing, but I couldn't tell.
I was derelict in the 30-minute, I
That's okay.
apologize.
You now have 16. Describe your understanding and/or preference of the role of an administrator as opposed to the role of a school board member and the school board.
And this is, the easiest way to say that is management and governance, okay? So as a superintendent, you hire a superintendent to manage the district and run the programs. And you hire the superintendent as your sole employee. And then the superintendent is in charge to make sure that everything else runs the way you're supposed to. And the way it's supposed to and the way the board wants it. And so as we go, that's my understanding, that's my preference. Because if as a board, you are clear and you tell me what we want, we understand what the vision is. Like I said in an earlier meeting, if it's something that I think I'm not understanding or is maybe out in left field a little bit, I will say, is this really what you mean? And is this really what you want? And then hopefully someone will ask me, well, why? Why don't you think that's what we want? And then that would give me the opportunity to say, well, in my 34 plus years in education, these are the things I've seen in situations like that. Now, if there could be a different mitigating factor beforehand, or there could have been a different mitigating factor, but if the board's decision is still, yes, this is the direction we want to go, then as your employee, I will make sure that I do my best to make sure that that happens exactly the way you want it. But in return, I'd like the ability to be able to say, okay, but this is how we're going to do it here, with the staff. So this is what it will look like in the staff. And then be focused on what that result is as opposed to maybe the path to get there.
What questions do you have for us?
Okay. Well, I asked my big one the last time I was here, which is kind of what do you think, what do you believe would a successful superintendent look like after the first year? Okay, so next one, or this one would be, I know you've done some facilities and space stuff. Do you have anything else as a board or as a district that you think would be future facilities needs or things that you?
I know there's like some locker rooms and bathrooms that could use some updating.
We need new baseball bleachers.
Baseball, softball field in general, large project, how we could meet the needs of both.
Okay, so really kind of sporting needs, those facility needs. How about playgrounds?
They're pretty good.
Okay.
We're for them.
Yep.
You are for them? Okay, that's a good thing. That would have been a deal breaker.
We encourage their use, yes.
The old school dangerous ones that had
Oh,
the real,
yeah, the
yes,
ones where you
yes.
spin
Yes,
around.
exactly,
The
yeah.
more metal, the better.
Yes.
And no soft surfaces
No,
to
no,
land
no,
on.
no, no, just straight blacktop.
Lots of merry-go-rounds.
Yes, yes. Okay. And then, so this is the hard one. This is kind of the turnaround for the question I asked the last time. Which is, what would be the things that each of you would say that would make me go, oh my God, I just absolutely want to be your superintendent? Oh, I saw that look. It's like,
We don't micromanage you.
I love that. That's, yes.
I took the easy one.
I think you got some really quality kids to work with, too.
Okay.
There's not a lot of discipline problems here. We've got kids that do very, very well.
I think we got a great staff.
I'll go. I think you have a community full of people that are here because they care about the district and they want to be here. It's easy to move to La Crosse. It's easy to go to Houston or Rushford and, still do your same job, but they're in La Crescent or Hoka because this is where they want their families to be raised. And you have their support. They just need a leader to help make their vision happen.
Well, what, all they said.
Okay.
And the pieces are here. We tackled the facilities. Nobody's got better facilities than us now. We're in a beautiful part of the state. I think the stakeholders they're ready. They're ready to be led, and that sounds terrible. But I think the right leader would really be a catalyst for us. So I think it's all there. We just got to find the right person. Or have the right person take it.
Wonderful, thank you. Those are all things I was hoping to hear. If I am offered the position and I'm your next superintendent, what would be the things that could be lying out there that I'd need to be aware of?
Housing, right?
Housing?
Yeah.
Okay. I did hear that.
Yeah, affordable housing is a true challenge. You had made the comment about, attending city council meetings, and I mean, those are the things we need to do to be able to help influence getting affordable housing in our community. We can't get new families in if they don't have anywhere to live.
What are your enrollment trends right now? Listening to that, I'm assuming that they're declining a bit because of housing, or are they staying stable, or
Pretty stable.
stable?
They
Okay.
kind of leveled out. They declined a little bit the past couple of
Okay.
years, and then now I would say the past year or two, they've stabled out pretty.
Okay, so the communities are fairly young? A little of both? A little of
Yeah,
both?
more,
I mean, we
I'm
have a
aging.
lot of families in the community that no longer have kids in school
Okay.
or their grandparents. And they're staying in the community to stay close to their families that are now
That are
here with
still
kids.
here.
So
Okay.
I think it's a mix of,
Okay.
there's younger families and then there's, people without kids in the district, but they care, right?
Yeah.
And they
That's-
are very invested.
Very much.
That's
And
fabulous.
it's a nice mix.
That's fabulous. So not a lot of like backpackers that came in after everyone grew up and moved out, and so they're not vested in the district. It's all people that are pretty much vested in the district.
Yeah. We're all pretty much related to each other.
This ain't Caledonia.
Oh, that's Caledonia.
Welcome to Appalachia.
That's Red Lake.
You know, one thing, we have a lot of competition for education here, though.
Yes.
We have Aquinas, we have the Montessori, we have the Cooley Christian, we have people can open enroll to Houston, Winona, Caledonia,
Onalaska Luther.
Onalaska Luther,
First
so
Lutheran.
we have to
So
do a
that's
good
about
job.
7 or 8.
Yeah, from a small, I don't want to
Okay.
call us a rural community, but there's a lot of different options for people. So we have to do well by students and families and show that we are the one that can do this.
Okay, that's good. That's a huge piece to know, too. So, I guess those would be my questions.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anything else that you would like to ask me or need to know?
Well, not with this guy looking at us like we're gonna.
Okay, well, let me grab my stuff.
Are you a Viking fan?